Hey everybody, it is Thursday, April 17th. You're listening to the Mo News Podcast. I'm Moshe Winunu. This is the place where we bring you just the facts and we read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. A reminder, Jill is on her well-deserved vacation through the end of this week, so you have me again solo today. Appreciate all of you on this April 17th. I bet you didn't know this. Today is National High Five Day, which apparently has existed for a few years now, honoring the high five. And so if you see someone out there in need of a little love or something, throw them up a high five. I don't recommend it here in New York City, where I am. Somebody might drop some F-bombs on you, but maybe in a friendlier part of the country, go give someone a high five today on National High Five Day. If you haven't seen already, we put our Dana Perino podcast over on the Mo News Interview podcast feed. If you don't subscribe to the Mo News Interview podcast, that is where all our interviews live eventually. They go first to premium and then to the interview podcast. So check it out. It's a conversation with Dana Perino of Fox News, talking about the media, talking about politics, talking about her time as White House press secretary, her analysis of the Trump administration, her life story, and her new book, which is all about advice from people, professional, personal, and I think you'll get a lot out of it. So definitely check out the Dana Perino conversation. And we have a lot more conversations coming to you. Thanks to all of you who joined the Mo News Premium workshop last night. We talked about all things immigration. Mo News Premium, of course, is where you get extra coverage, weekend coverage, an Instagram feed, a premium podcast. We also do workshops on a number of topics and took all your questions on immigration last night with an immigration expert. All right, let's get started here with today's headlines. New information on the man who set fire to the Pennsylvania governor's residence over the weekend, just on the first night of Passover. Apparently, this guy called into 911 after he committed arson, admitting to the attack. We'll tell you what he told them. And more on the immigration front. A judge threatens the Trump administration with criminal contempt over deportation fight. This is just the latest case where another judge is saying the White House is defying what they're ordering them to do. We also have the details on that senator who traveled to El Salvador yesterday, hoping to enter that maximum security prison. We'll tell you what happened. In some financial news, the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell sounded the alarm on tariffs yesterday, sending stocks lower. Some concern here both about growth and inflation. A sign of the times in the Midwest. More and more data centers are being built to keep up with the demand for AI, but why some local communities are not so into building these centers, we'll tell you about the impact. A story that is leading to a lot of buzz online. The Wall Street Journal has the story out about the tactics Elon Musk uses to manage his legion of babies and their mothers. More on Musk's 14 official children, several mothers there, and I say official 14 kids because it is rumored that he has many more than that. Another story causing buzz out of Washington. Trump has a gold guy who literally does the gold in his residences. Well, he's brought him to the White House. We'll tell you about how they're redesigning the Oval Office and other parts of the White House. And finally, the venues were announced for the 2028 Olympics in LA. The lineup is nearly complete. We'll tell you about that. And of course, I will have On This Day in History for you at the end of the podcast. All right, let's get started here with the first story out of Pennsylvania. We have new details right now about the man who is admitted to setting the Pennsylvania governor's residence on fire over the weekend. That man, Corey Balmer, apparently called 911 operators after the attack, saying that he targeted the Pennsylvania Democrat, Josh Shapiro, because he's upset about what's happening to Palestinians in Gaza. He apparently told 911 he will not take part in the governor's plans for what he wants to do to the Palestinian people. That is according to the search warrant that we saw yesterday. I will note that as governor of Pennsylvania, Shapiro has no role in shaping U.S. foreign policy, but he is Jewish and a supporter of Israel. The attack, again, took place on the first night of Passover, just after they finished their first holiday meal. The county DA in Pennsylvania has not yet decided whether they're going to charge Balmer with ethnic intimidation. That is what Pennsylvania's hate crime statute is referred to. Balmer, we should note, the attacker, already faces several other charges: attempted murder, aggravated arson, terrorism. If he's found guilty, he could face more than 100 years in prison without hate crimes charges. So the question here is whether they're going to add that in, given that he said that his attack was due to the fact that Shapiro is Jewish and he doesn't like what's happening in the Middle East. Reminder here, this fire happened just about 2 a.m. After their meal on Saturday night. Balmer broke into the governor's residence with a hammer before setting multiple fires with Molotov cocktails he had made at home. He said that he would have beaten Shapiro with a hammer if he saw them. Shapiro and his family were sleeping inside the home at that moment. They were safely evacuated by police. No one was hurt. Potentially millions of dollars of damage done to the home, according to the estimates here. We should note that in addition to the 911 call, Balmer effectively turned himself into police. Police say that Balmer followed the typical what they call terrorist attack cycle that include checking out the scene in advance, planning the attack, being very strategic about the attack. They found 4 phones, a laptop, and an external hard drive in his parents' home. We should mention that Balmer is 38 years old. His family members, relatives had contacted mental health agencies for help in recent years. They reported that he, at least very recently, was behaving erratically again, was off his medication. Apparently, there's a report here that he was chewing on batteries, according to one family member, but apparently still did not meet the criteria for involuntary commitment. So just a very sad story all around there. And now back to the immigration story, or immigration stories that we have been following for a while now. News out of El Salvador on Wednesday, where Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen tried to access that man, the migrant who was deported there accidentally last month. Kilmer Abrego Garcia is being held in the notorious mega prison that holds 40,000 prisoners there. Van Hollen said he was a resident of Maryland and I would like to visit him. So he flew there yesterday, but El Salvador's government denied the senator's request to meet or even speak by phone with Abrego Garcia, even though he was in the country. Abrego Garcia is a Salvadorian national who lived and worked legally in the U.S., but is being held in a high-security terrorism facility called CICOT, despite a U.S. court order calling for the government to return him. The Supreme Court has also weighed in here, saying that the White House needs to facilitate Abrego Garcia's return, given that the White House has also admitted that they shouldn't have deported him. But the White House has been saying, we don't need to. We don't want to. And they're interpreting the Supreme Court using the word facilitate, as in facilitate his return, to mean they just have to provide a plane or open the door or a gate when he arrives back in the country, but they don't need to force El Salvador to return him. So there's now a debate over the word facilitate happening in the lower court that could go up again. The Trump Department of Justice, again, has admitted the deportation was a, quote, administrative error in March. They basically had the wrong paperwork, didn't realize that a judge back in 2019 had said explicitly, you cannot deport this man back to El Salvador due to threats of violence that he faces from gangs down there. But the Trump administration says he is a member of the MS-13 gang, and even though they messed up by sending him down there, they have no interest in bringing him back. He, we should note, has not been found guilty of any crime or gang affiliation, though 2 immigration judges back in 2019 did hear evidence that he was found with a couple of gang members in a parking lot of a Home Depot. A confidential informant at the time told a cop that they believed Abrego Garcia was a member of the gang. That was enough for the judges at the time to say, okay, we'll accept that he's a member of MS-13, the gang here. But still, given the threats that he faced back in El Salvador, they gave him legal status to work here. He is married to an American. He has a child here, a 5-year-old, as well as 2 stepkids with that woman who's been advocating for his release. Now, at the same time, as the Trump administration argues here, that while they messed up, they don't want to bring him back. They view him as a member of a gang. They released yesterday, the Department of Homeland Security did, over on social media, a restraining order that was filed by the wife against Abrego Garcia back in 2021. The filing claims that he punched, scratched, and ripped her shirt. Now, in the aftermath of that, it appears that they have reconciled, that he lives with her again, and she's advocating for his release. But the Department of Homeland Security here trying to make the case that he is not a good dude, and that even if they messed up, they shouldn't have to return him here in the U.S., even though they deported him again with no due process and no specific criminal charges. Back to Van Hollen in El Salvador, that senator who wasn't allowed to see him. Well, he was able to meet with the vice president of El Salvador. He said that when he asked why Abrego Garcia was in prison there, El Salvadorian leader said, well, because the U.S. is paying us to hold him. Remember, we've told you the U.S. is paying El Salvador $20,000 per prisoner, about $6 million right now, though we did get a report from the Wall Street Journal yesterday that they plan to double the size of that prison. This is the mega prison I told you about called CECOT, CECOT. It holds 40,000 people right now. It might expand to 80,000 if this goes into effect. The U.S. is interested in sending even more people there. Trump intimated earlier this week, I told you, that he would like to send American citizen prisoners to El Salvador, though there are a whole bunch of constitutional issues related to that. Now, while the senator didn't get to see him, El Salvador says, requested through the embassy, we might allow you to do that in the future. There are other members of Congress, including Senator Cory Booker, who say they're planning trips to El Salvador now. Again, they'll have to go through the U.S. Embassy, which goes up to the State Department. So we'll see if the Trump administration State Department works with Democrats on this. And so that's the latest on Abrego Garcia, though there were also other developments. Yesterday, a U.S. District Court judge in the case related to the overall deportation using the law from the 1700s, the Alien Enemies Act, said that there is cause here to find the Trump White House in criminal contempt. Now, this is the law from 1798 passed while John Adams was president that Trump invoked last month to deport just over 100 Venezuelans to El Salvador without going through a judge. This is a wartime act. Trump is determined that this is war, what's happening on the border, that these gangs are terrorist groups. And so they decided to try their chances at this Alien Enemies Act. Now, if you recall, back in March, the day that Trump invoked it, there were lawsuits already, and the judge in this case, Boasberg, said freeze all deportations using this law until we figure out if this is constitutional, what you're doing. Well, the planes, including with Abrego Garcia and others, ended up in El Salvador anyway. The White House is saying, well, you didn't have a control because the planes had already taken off and passed the U.S. border. Now, there is a question as to when these planes actually took off, if they took off while the court hearing was happening on that day, and so whether they were trying to get around the law if the judge froze them, basically saying take off before he rules here. Nonetheless, the judge is not pleased about this, Judge Boasberg. This is the case that's already gone up to the Supreme Court once. The Supreme Court said that while Boasberg ruled that they have to return those individuals, the Supreme Court said, we don't know about that. But what we do know is that moving forward, Trump administration, if you invoke this law, if you use this law, you do have to go through a judge. Due process, even for people not here legally. A reminder to all of you, the way the Constitution is written, it never refers to citizens. It refers to persons. So in many cases, people who are visa holders, people who are green card holders, or people who are even here illegally, they have certain constitutional rights, just like natural born citizens. So the Supreme Court said, moving forward, using this law, you do need to go through a judge, though they left open the whole 137 people that were already sent down to El Salvador. So the Supreme Court hasn't ruled on them. We'll see what happens. Boasberg isn't happy, though, because he says that even though the Supreme Court overturned part of my ruling demanding you bring these guys back immediately, nonetheless, you defied me. And you defied a judge before it went through the process. And the way that things need to work here is when a judge orders you to do something, you do it and you go through the system and you appeal. And if they appeal my ruling, that's okay. But you don't defy me or defy any judge, frankly. And so the judge said that he is looking into criminal contempt here for the government. What that means is a good question. Ultimately here, criminal contempt typically ends with a fine or someone being imprisoned. But it's a unique situation here because that would mean a government official would be fined or an agency would be fined, call it DHS or ICE or the Department of Justice, or, they'd have to figure out how to do this. It's a very unique situation. Or do you put someone in jail? It's a fight here. It's one of the many fights we've told you between the executive branch and the judiciary as the Trump administration really tries to push the law here and push their interpretation of the law. So this is yet another case we're watching here, and we'll see how this escalates. In the meantime, one other item related to immigration, a comment the president made in an interview with the Spanish language service of Fox News called Fox Noticias, caught our attention. He proposed in that interview earlier this week, we put a clip up on Instagram, that there should be a legal pathway for undocumented migrants who voluntarily leave the country. So people who are here illegally, who self-deport, this is the term they're using, self-deport, inform the government about it. He thinks that if they do that, if they go out of their way to say, you know what, I'm not here legally, I would like to come back, he would like a pathway for them. He says that this is particularly relevant, and we've told you that there's a lot of people who are here illegally who work in the hotel world, who work in the agricultural space, and so he's hoping that they'll take him up on this offer, and he's describing this as a self-deportation program with a legal opportunity at the end. And I should mention one other sector that's big when it comes to illegals in the workforce: construction. 1 out of 10 construction jobs is made up of undocumented migrants right now. So those are a few of the headlines in relation to immigration. And I should mention again that we had a great immigration workshop last night in the Mo News Premium community. Mo News Premium, mo.news/premium is where you get weekend coverage on the Instagram page, where you get a Mo News Premium podcast. You get a weekly news quiz, you get deep dives, analysis, special guests, behind the scenes content, and you also get workshops on topics. We did one on Greenland, on the Panama Canal, a variety of issues. Last night we did a deep dive into all things immigration, border policy, answering all of your questions. So yet another reason to join Mo News Premium, especially right now as our annual sale is taking place over at mo.news/premium. Use the code Good News, one word, Good News, to get 20% off our annual membership, one of our best deals of the year. That also includes existing premium members. You can get a discount on your renewal. Group members, monthly members, if you're upgrading to annual, but again, all you new members, 20% off with the code Good News over at mo.news/premium. And I should say, we are majority supported by people like you. And so we appreciate you. And if you want to support independent media and Mo News, join today, mo.news/premium. All right, let's get to today's speed read from ABC News. Higher inflation and slower economic growth could be coming as a result of Trump's tariffs policies. That is according to the one and only Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell. He moved the markets yesterday, speaking to an audience at the Economic Club of Chicago. And I should say, he moved the markets downward significantly when he made those comments. He said that the level of the tariff increases announced so far is significantly larger than anticipated, and this is likely to have major economic effects. The big issue that he laid out for the Fed is they don't know what to do. Will they have to raise interest rates or lower interest rates? Because one of the unique things about tariffs is that it slows growth and it also increases inflation. And the tactic the Federal Reserve takes to lower inflation is to raise interest rates. The way that the Federal Reserve can deal with slow growth and increase growth is by lowering interest rates. So the tariff issue leads to an economic conundrum for the Federal Reserve, where it's one issue that can be fixed by lowering interest rates and one issue that can be fixed by raising interest rates. So they'll be sort of stuck in the middle, like the old Steelers Wheel song. Jokers to the left of me. Anyway, the point being that Jerome Powell, by making those comments, they hang on every word, the markets do. Stocks dropped immediately after those comments. The Dow fell by about 2%. The S&P the same. NASDAQ dropped by 3% yesterday. So we will closely watch the markets today as one of the top economic minds and most influential economic figures in the country weighed in to the negative yesterday when it comes to existing tariff policy. All right, our next story comes to us from Axios. The Midwest is becoming an artificial intelligence data center hub. The question to many in the Midwest is, are the costs worth the benefits? AI data centers are essentially server farms that store all of our information. The Midwest has become one of the fastest growing areas for the development of these data centers, from Kansas to Iowa, across the Great Lakes. Columbus, Ohio, and Chicago are among the primary data centers. So to some, that's great news, but to others, not so much. These facilities require huge amounts of energy and water to run them, and it's also not clear that these data centers bring in that many new jobs either. So local governments right now are signing agreements with tech firms for new construction without transparency with the public, meaning many people in the public who vote these folks in, they're not aware of the environmental, the economic, and the resource impacts on the community. Right now, data centers use more than 4% of U.S. total electricity, and the Department of Energy is predicting that could go up to 12% within the next couple of years, and so that could increase energy costs for area residents. The electrical equipment also gets extremely hot, requiring 24/7 air conditioning. So again, high energy and water usage here. But nonetheless, the Midwest becoming a hub for this. One of the reasons, cooler temperatures in the region, it reduces the need for as much energy and water consumption for cooling versus, say, going to place like Texas or Arizona or Florida. And this is only becoming more important as we continue to become more and more reliant on AI. AI enables us to do a lot of things, but also requires a lot of energy. It's a story we're going to continue to follow here. One interesting stat, a Deloitte survey found that the average American home now has an average of 21 digital devices. And as every digital device now gets AI, they're going to require more battery power, more recharging, aka more energy as well. right, this is the story I told you about at the beginning from the Wall Street Journal that's getting a lot of attention. How Elon Musk deals with his legion of children. Fascinating story out of the Wall Street Journal, the tactics that he uses to manage both the kids and their various mothers. Officially now, he has 14 kids via 4 mothers that we know of. The Journal reports on the legal fight with one of them, the newest one, Ashley St. Clair. She is a social media influencer that Musk briefly dated and had a child with. Originally, we're learning, Elon Musk offered her $15 million, 1.5, plus $100,000 a month in support for her silence, meaning she would have to be silent about the fact that he is the father, including to her own child. She could not tell her own child who their father is. So she kept their child a secret through the pregnancy and the birth, but she never signed the deal because she didn't like that clause preventing her from telling her son that Musk was his dad. In February, a tabloid was the first to report on their relationship and the child, and that's when she went public on X, announcing that she had welcomed a child into the world with Elon, which of course went against the agreement that they had. Even though she hadn't signed it, he then officially pulled the deal that would have again offered her $15 million plus $100,000 a month. And she's claiming she's having a really tough time now, lacking support. She's become very outspoken. Ashley St. Clair, you can follow her X account, where she often chimes in on Elon Musk and how she's dealing with motherhood and the various promises that he has made. Now, as far as how Elon Musk tries to manage all of this, managing these agreements and various negotiations with the mothers, he apparently has an advisor just devoted to that. His name is Jared Birchall. He's also the CEO of Elon's neurotechnology company called Neuralink, and his wealth manager. He also helps Musk use his wealth to buy the silence of some women he has children with. You know, we've told you before, Musk believes that civilization is under threat because of a declining population. So he literally wants to take it upon himself to help populate the earth as much as he can. Apparently, he has found a number of the women on Twitter, including the aforementioned Ashley St. Clair. She says that apparently when she was pregnant, Musk even suggested that they recruit other women together that he could have children with to reach, quote, legion level before the apocalypse, what he calls the child apocalypse. Legion, of course, is a military term, a Roman legion. Just for reference, had about 5,000 to 6,000 people in it. I'll leave you there. All right, our next story here also comes to us from the Wall Street Journal. A couple months back, a number of you noticed some of the new gold finishes on the fireplace in the Oval Office. We'd posted a photo of President Trump there. And a number of you said, is that gold normal? And I said, no, you're right. That's a new addition. Apparently, Trump, over the last couple months, has been adding new features to the Oval Office. Gold carvings on the fireplace, gold vases and urns, gold picture frames, gold coasters with his name engraved. And apparently to help achieve this, the Wall Street Journal has learned that he has called in what he calls his gold guy. Literally, he's got a guy who helps him with gold accoutrement. The gold guy's name is John Icahart. He's a cabinet maker from South Florida who has helped Trump with projects at Mar-a-Lago. People have been commenting on how he's sort of Mar-a-Lago-ifying the White House. Mar-a-Lago, of course, is Florida residence that is covered wall to wall, ceiling to floor in some rooms with a lot of gold. His apartment at the top of Trump Tower, also a lot of gold, like Liberace level gold, for those of you who understand that reference from back in the day. Foreign dignitaries apparently have recently given him some gold-themed gifts. They know his love for gold. He had someone go out and get new gold frames for him and Vance's portraits because he wanted them to glisten as people walked by. So that's the latest there. We're also monitoring the changes that he's looking to make to the Rose Garden, where they've already removed some trees. He's looking to create more of a patio for himself out there. So he's starting to customize the White House to be more like some of his private homes. All right, finally here from the LA Times, we're getting closer to the Summer Games in LA coming up in 2028. And earlier this week, we start to learn the venues where some of the sports will be played, including Dodger Stadium and Alamitos Beach, two of the latest venues announced. The master plan announced by the International Olympic Committee was for about half of the events taking place in LA and then others around Southern California. There's also an event, I believe, happening in Oklahoma and Arizona as well. As for the events in LA, the downtown LA venues include the Peacock Theater and Crypto.com Arena, home to the LA Lakers, of course. Baseball and boxing competitions will take place there. The Universal Studios lot, recognizable for the backdrop of movies like Back to the Future, To Kill a Mockingbird, and others. You can watch squash over there. Venice Beach will host the triathlon, the marathon, and cycling courses. Baseball will be making its Olympic return. It used to be an Olympic sport. It hasn't been there for the last couple of games. Naturally, that'll be played at Dodger Stadium. Governor Gavin Newsom in California has even branded the games the Recovery Games after the devastating wildfires in January. And so the hope is that they can get as much as they can rebuilt ahead of those games, maybe with the help of the investment around those games. But doing this as the reconstruction happens will be challenging. There's a lot to fix. And it comes as LA is not just hosting the Olympics in 2028. They also have the World Cup. They'll be hosting some World Cup games in 2026. And they got the Super Bowl there in 2027 in just about 2 years. So a lot coming to LA, and they have their work cut out for them. All right, finally here on this day in history, we begin in 1961, when about 1,500 CIA-trained Cuban exiles launched the disastrous Bay of Pigs invasion. This was the CIA plan to try to take out Fidel Castro just a few years after he took over. It was crushed after just a couple days, and ultimately Castro would rule for decades after that, and then his brother would take over. Staying in the 1960s here, on this day in 1964, the Ford introduced the Mustang for the first time. It was meant to compete with the Chevy Corvette. They almost called it the Ford Cougar, but they went with Mustang, initially a $2,300 price tag. The Mustang would take off, sell tens of millions over the years. I should note the 2025 Mustang, the MSRP on that is $32,000, but that's the very basic version of the Mustang. All right, on this day in 1970, Apollo 13, the command module, I should note Apollo 13, carrying 3 astronauts, entered Earth's atmosphere and splashed down, ending one of the most tense chapters in space history. Just 4 days earlier, an oxygen tank had exploded, threatening the lives of the 3 astronauts. Still one of my favorite movies with Tom Hanks and that whole crew, Apollo 13. A must-watch if you've never seen it, or frankly, if you haven't seen it in a while, I feel like I need to go back and watch it again. All right, a bit of pop culture history. A happy birthday to CNBC, the Consumer News Business Channel. That's what it stands for, CNBC for short. It's launched on this day in 1989. Still must-see TV when the market's going up big or down big, and you're seeking some insight and analysis and explanation for what's going on. Staying with TV here, on this day in 2011, Game of Thrones premieres on HBO. The show would last for several seasons, concluding in 2019. Now, that's a show I still haven't seen, and I know some of you are surprised and angry when I tell you that, but I will get to it at some point. We end here with a bit of music history. On this day in 1972, Elton John released Rocket Man, so Rocket Man turning 53 years old today. And on this day in 1973, the Eagles released their second studio album, Desperado. All right, I want to thank you again for listening to the Mo News podcast, for sticking with me as I do this solo podcast. Sorry to hear yesterday that Megaphone, our hosting platform, was having issues, so people were having trouble listening to this on both Spotify and Apple, among other platforms yesterday. I understand that has been corrected, and you'll know if it's been corrected if you can actually get to this part of the podcast and you heard the podcast. So it appears we are A-OK. Zoom also went down yesterday, incidentally, but Zoom is back, I'm told, as well. Unrelated issues between both those companies, and so we'll see what today has in store. Everyone stay safe out there. I'll see you back here tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to the Mo News podcast. Have a fantastic day. I hope you enjoyed.